All right, welcome back. We've got video number 4 at Super Zoo. I'm really excited. Today I've got Jason Savitt, who is Rick Savitt's son, who runs Prevue-Hendryx, which is also known as Prevue Pet Products, correct?
That's correct.
All right. And I was just talking to you, and I'm sorry your father passed away recently.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Very sorry about that. But your company goes back far. And we were talking about how Hendryx goes back to the 1850s. And then in the early 1900s, the man who founded Hendryx, his son took it over. And then in the 50s, his son's 2 daughters' husbands took it over and took it public. And then they went bankrupt in the 60s. And that's when Prevue Metal came in and kind of absorbed everything up.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. And one of the, I'm trying to think of, to supplement a little bit of what you said. I think one of the reasons that they couldn't go any further, and I believe they were in New Haven, Connecticut at the time, was the area where they were was being gentrified.
Okay.
And everything in that area was eminent domain. So that somewhat forced the sale of the company.
I didn't know that.
And one of the other reasons that they had trouble during that period of time is they were constantly, as our country was in different conflicts, they were converted into military manufacturing.
Yeah, they did metalwork.
They did metalwork, so they wound up making, I think, a lot of ammunition casings, boxes, pots and pans, different things. So turning on and off from that over the years was really disruptive.
I can imagine.
One other piece of trivia, I think Andrew B. Hendryx, the original founder, the money that I think he used to open the company was he was the original patent holder of the open face fishing reel.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, his claim to fame up until that point.
Right.
So bringing it back up to where you left off, my grandfather, Merv Savitt, was the owner of Reliance Pet Products in Manhattan. He and his partners, and they were public at the time, purchased Prevue Metal Products in Chicago, and by association, Hendryx, and then started over the years consolidating operations out of New York and into Chicago. So we, the name of our company, Prevue Pet Products, but we still continue to market under the name Prevue-Hendryx because of that great history.
Yeah, it was a wonderful history. What I thought killed Hendryx, and I'm probably wrong then, because of what you just said about the military thing, was during the late 60s, when I started working in pet shops as a little kid, I remember that was the influx of bird cages from Japan, like Hoi. Do you remember them?
Sure.
And that was a Japanese guy, and they were bringing in all these cheap bird cages that were, Japan was the early China, and they couldn't compete. How can you compete with American labor against labor over there?
And a big part of that was Reliance Pet Products, who was my grandfather. One of the reasons that they purchased Prevue was he was one of the big importers from Japan of those cages, which included the million-part bamboo assemble yourself.
Oh, yeah, cages. I remember those. Yeah.
So we were one of the first importers from Japan, and used the strategy of import and domestic production.
Now tell me the story how Rick got the job.
So Rick, my father, I want to say graduated college in about 1968. So, right in the middle of the Vietnam War. He was from New York. He was granted a deferment as a reform school teacher in the Bronx.
Wow.
So, which fit his personality pretty well. He was a rough customer, and when that all ended or was starting to wind down in the early 70s, he left that position and became a salesman for Reliance, and then eventually was moved to Chicago to run Prevue, and I think moved out there in 1972.
And eventually bought it.
Yeah, eventually those operations were consolidated.
Yeah.
What happened at that point was the company was taken out of public by a private equity company.
Right.
And we repurchased the outstanding equity from the private equity company finally in 1996.
Oh, that's great. Now, what about the story of at the warehouse in Florida that turned in? You just told me this, and I can't remember exactly how that went.
I believe the story goes. Then there's a few different offshoots of just the company over the years. My grandfather, and I want to say this was in the late 60s, we had a warehouse in Florida that eventually was sold to Bernie Levine Country Pet.
Yeah, Bernie Levine Pet Farm.
Yeah.
Pet Farm.
Pet Farm, and then he opened a distributorship in Florida that I believe was called Country Pet.
All right.
And that was their warehouse that eventually became the Central Garden warehouse in Florida. And then one of the other stories we talked about, there were a couple guys working in the back of the New York facility who went out on their own and became a very notable historical leather leash and collar company, American Leather.
Right.
Or what became American Leather, I think, years later.
Right.
So there was a lot of throughout all that history, there was a lot of offshoot companies born and success stories.
Yeah.
You know, that developed from that over the years.
I know. I'm floored because when you said, what was the other company that was out of Chicago that did bird cages, or it was a Repco or
Repco. So that was one of the marketing names that Reliance Pet was using. So I think Repco, REPPCO, was Reliance Pet Products Company.
Because I see that tag Repco, and I go, who is that? But it's Reliance. You know?
And I think they were involved. If I remember the story right, in one of the first importers of the plastic turtle bowls.
Oh, really?
Well, with the little
palm tree.
The little palm tree. Yeah, coming in from Japan.
Oh, geez.
They were into all, basically anything from aquatic to cages to turtle bowls.
Oh, that's great.
Basically anything that they could manufacture, import, and put together as the industry was formed.
Wow. Now, how old were you when you started working for your dad?
Well, going way back, probably about 14.
14?
Working in the warehouse, unloading trucks.
Because you're not that old.
I'm 53 now, so it's been a little while. And then after college, I started working in the company as a salesman, and then taking other roles throughout time.
He always tried to get you in to work for the company.
Yeah, he always said that you can do. I want you to do whatever you feel like, but now looking back, there was always, some.
He was like fishing,
Yeah, there was always something leading back into working together and working for the company.
Now, I heard a story that Bob Kraus did the eulogy at your dad's funeral, but he said something like, "Well, I can't really say much because if I had to talk about how Rick talked, they would censor me out of here."
Yeah, and he did a great job, kind of coming up to the line, but not getting too close to it. My father was a very colorful character, as his father was.
Yeah,
and he really enjoyed that persona, and trade shows like this was what he really, really loved. And he loved pets and the industry. He really felt strongly about his legacy and our family's legacy in the industry, and I think that was one of the proudest things of his life, his career.
That's wonderful. That's why I'm so glad you could do this. I mean, there's so many little parts that nobody knows, and now you're putting it all together for us, you know?
Yeah, and it's such a colorful history, and sitting here talking to you about it, my family and a lot of the companies here all really developed together over the years and created this fantastic industry.
I know.
And really helped, something I'm proud of, as a family member, really, I like to believe, help people create that bond between themselves, their families, their pets, make pets part of the home environment, as that's changed over the years.
Right.
So, that's a great thing, and there's a lot of really neat history. I think have forgotten more than I should have, or certainly than I remember.
Well, I think it's coming back though, because if I keep talking to you, I know I'll get a few more tidbits.
Yeah, and I really need to start writing these down.
I did that with John Willinger. I started writing the series of how it all happened, the different companies and how they merge. I thought, because it needs to be in print, so we can go back to it, and say, oh, that's how that happened. Everybody said that, Mattel bankrupted Metaframe, and they didn't. Mattel sold to Equology, and Equology got over their head, nice guy, and that's what bankrupted, and then Hagen picked up a big piece of that, right? But nobody knew that, so we got the rest of the story just by talking to him, which was wonderful.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're doing a great thing.
Thank you.
Get this all down and get that chronology, and that spider web of all these different companies and the interrelations of different people and different companies, and so many people in this industry have spent their lives here with single companies, multiple companies,
You don't get out of it once you get into it.
Companies making offshoots. We've rarely seen people who have come into the industry who have
left. Yeah, it doesn't happen because we love it. Well, and don't forget, I told you that story when I saw your dad, and I had to be in my 20s back then, or late 20s, early 30s, and he knew I was just a freak for all this pet stuff, and he goes, Gary, come here. He goes, look at this. And he pulls out of his drawer an original Hendryx. It wasn't even a catalog. It was for the salespeople of Hendryx to go into a store and show them full color illustrations of the brand new cages. And I was just like, my eyes got big, and I'm like, oh, you're just killing me now. You're just teasing me, And of course it went back in the drawer.
Yeah, some of them are
they're works of art.
They're works of art.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them were black and white photographs or sepia photographs that were then hand painted, and filled in and colorized.
That he was ahead of his time. Hendryx really was ahead of his time as far as doing. He advertised a lot. He understand the importance of advertising.
And as I understand it, back then, most of their advertising, and we have some of the advertisement that we've recollected over the years, were not as pet products. They were advertised in Better Homes and Gardens. That was a big one. Reader's Digest, as home decor items, and in particular for weddings.
Really?
So they were used, for people at weddings to put the cards
in.
and envelopes in, and I guess a tradition at the time was lovebirds.
Right.
Were given away as wedding presents.
I never knew that.
That was one of their main markets.
That's incredible.
And I think one of the reasons why a lot of those designs were so ornate.
Yeah. I always thought too, Hendryx was always pushing the envelope, as was Reliance. They would do a cage that was just so unique, and I thought, well, that's the trade show thing. They would show you what we can do. They only want to make 20 of these, but they wanted to show you because it was so expensive. But this is what we can do. We're Hendryx. So, and Reliance did the same thing. You had a Storybrooke cottage cage. Do you remember that with the wheels on it?
I do.
I have one of those.
Do you?
It's so cool. It says Reliance on it. It's the coolest cage in the world.
Yeah, they could do at that time a different world.
Yeah.
Those type of items that were all really handmade.
Yeah.
You know, the labor market was so different.
Uh-huh.
And yeah, they could do that. They could make limited runs of items,
Right.
see what worked, change designs. A lot of them, particularly I think the early 1900s, and certainly prior to that, was rather than metal wires being welded together,
Right.
there were small holes drilled in the wire, and the other wire was threaded through the hole because there was not enough electricity available.
That's amazing.
To do the welding. That's basically how everything is done today.
Yeah.
And there's just different standards, but they were able to make such ornate, beautiful designs that way.
You've seen the cages that have the bent wires. It's like the labor. It just blows me away how much labor is involved in making some of these old cages that they did.
Yeah, they were truly artistic designs.
The second time I saw your dad, he was going to a meeting in one of the big box stores, and he had a new cage design that was like a Victorian design with the little house, the little dormer windows.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and he was so nervous. I'm like, "You okay, Rick?" He goes, "Yeah, I just need this sale," you know. And he was all hyped up, ready to go into the meeting, and he was really proud of that cage, and it was cool looking. It really was. He's like bringing back a little bit of the Victorian, you know, with the dormer windows at the top and everything.
I remember that. I remember designing that.
Really?
And it was a lot of fun.
Uh-huh.
But always, trying to bring back a little bit of that artistic,
Right.
Certainly, bring cages into the family room of the home,
Right.
like everybody does with pet products today. But trying to bring back a little bit of that flair,
Right.
a little bit of that artistic design in a more modern way, or at any point in time.
Right.
I think the company and the people, us and everyone in the room here, really tries to do that in their own way.
Uh-huh.
We're just really happy to, have been a part of that for so many years.
Do you remember the bamboo cage from China? Were you the ones that made it into metal, like silver metal? Like, because I saw somebody transform that bamboo rattan cage into a metal cage.
I believe so, or maybe attempted to.
Yeah.
But and if I remember right, it just didn't have the same that same feel as the bamboo cages. I still hear about that from a lot of older folks with stores who remember those, and they all loved them. But they all say the same thing, which was, "Oh my God, assembling those was,
a nightmare,
like a puzzle."
Yeah.
And took several people all afternoon to put together this ornate bamboo cage that came in a million little pieces. But everyone remembers those, and
they were inexpensive, I think.
They were inexpensive. They were ornate. They were nice looking, and again, I think help bring pets into everyday life.
Yeah.
Through the use of design.
Right. It's been great talking to you. I tell you.
Thank you. It's been fun recounting the history.
I am so happy because it's when you can complete the picture, it's just wonderful, because there's so much missing pieces, and now we'll save it forever. It'll be up
great.
there.
It's been a lot of fun talking about it. I hope I'm doing it justice.
Yeah,
There's
you are.
So many pieces of the puzzle, like you said.
Well, if I did your dad, we'd probably have to edit it quite a bit, right?
Yeah. You'd have to boil that down.
There'd be a few words in there.
There'd be a lot of stories and a lot of color.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Jason. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Gary.
All right.
I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. That's a wrap.